All right, team. We're going to crack into it. We've got enough for a quorum. The other elected members can join us as we move on through, because otherwise we'll be here till 5. And so, Grayson, are we back on live streaming? Very good. All right, team. We're now on to the activity reports, and I'm just going to hand it back over to Maurice. Am I? Yeah. Great. Am I saying your name right?
Yes, you do. Thanks,
Very
Chair.
good.
So we are moving on to place and space, and starting with parks and open spaces on page 85. Darren, please.
So in terms of an update in terms of parks and open space. So as you can see, generally all the indicators are positive. There are 2 projects on hold, but actually work is progressing in terms of the design for the amenity building. It's more just about the timing of that work happening and making sure that the consenting and design work is done. So work is continuing. It's more that there'll be a carryover in terms of the actual physical delivery of the building. In terms of the hockey turf, this is basically on hold because we got advice back from the installer that they could wait a year and that work could be deferred for another year.
Thank you, Darren. And you'll recall in a workshop, I think earlier this week, Councillor Randall raised the point around whether items can be deferred. And here's an example where we don't just do the work because it's scheduled, and that this work on the hockey turf has now been deferred by a year. So that's an example where works are often deferred. Any questions out of this? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next. Councillor McCann. Sorry, Councillor Halliday.
Go first. Oh. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I just wanted to note that Kaituku Park has gone back to the drawing board with regards to the community sort of thinking that the park was a little bit bland. Not taking anything away from anyone that put the plans together at all. But I was just wondering, I have heard this is not the only time I've heard this sort of feedback on our parks, and I know the quality of the equipment's good. I'm just wondering whether or perhaps my question is, if we are looking at changing the makeup of our parks, what's the process for that? Because I appreciate in a program of doing them up again, sorry, the word eludes me for a second, that process is now in motion. But
we've got Mr. Jefferson chomping at the bit to respond to you.
Yeah, look, thank you. I think I can anticipate Councillor's questions. So through you, Mr. Chair. Look, Alison and the team spent a lot of time really engaging with the parks users, and I'm not suggesting they always get it right. But when you look at the residents' satisfaction survey results, they're pretty high. But I think there's always opportunity for improvement. You know, I think the last year's one set at about 96%, and I've pushed Alison in my previous role to aim for 100% and make sure that but they do go out of their way to engage, and sometimes that actually slows the process down a little. So I hope that's of some help.
It's more of if you another question, because otherwise we'll be here for.
Yes, through Mr. Chair. With regards to the piece of work that's coming up on the age-friendly communities, and in regards to our aged community, what's the process to incorporate perhaps some design in regards to our aged community into our playgrounds at the moment?
Just waiting to go red. Again, my understanding is they do consider, and there's one that's kicking around the back of my mind, which quite clearly they've engaged in, aged play or aged accessibility for the park. But maybe we could come back on that. But I do know it's a conversation I think Councillor Randall and I have had previously, and I have talked with Alison, and they assure me, and Janice is going to trump me.
No, I was just going to add on to what you were saying, that I think those sorts of issues, potentially can be considered as part of the age-friendly work. You know, how we use our existing infrastructure and our existing budgets to implement that strategy will be an important consideration.
Councillor Halliday, did you have any further? Councillor McCann.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions around procurement for playground equipment and just understanding that process as to how that plays out. Are there a limited number of playground equipment makers that we purchase from, and what drives that?
Roland, I'm happy to take that question. And through you, Mr. Chairman, look, there are a limited number, and that's kind of surprised me when I came into the place and space 18 months ago. And following on from the presentation, I think from Steve Bickers this morning, the team used the best procurement process that's available to us to get that return on investment and decent equipment to put into the playgrounds and make sure we're getting a good value for money. But actually it's a fairly limited market until you start to go overseas. And of course, if you were trying to import anything at the moment, you'd be looking at huge delays and none of the support that are offered by the New Zealand companies.
Is it appropriate, Mr. Chair, if we could possibly take this offline and have a little bit further information about that procurement, because the end result from some of the community is that they're seeing what look like identical sets of equipment across the region as opposed to perhaps what we grew up with, which was quite distinct sets of equipment.
So, Councillor McCann, where Councillor McCann's going with that is, because I've sort of followed it as well, reference to a couple of the playground upgrades where there's been dissatisfaction with the two options that have been rolled out. So would it be appropriate maybe to organise a briefing between Parks and Open Spaces, Parks and Reserves, with elected members to help them understand that process, to take feedback? Because I imagine part of the issue is a budgetary one, in the sense that equipment's probably gotten more expensive as years have gone on. Darren, do you want to just add to that?
Things I think it's making sure that there's budget, but there's also health and safety requirements. There's also accessibility requirements, and in terms of ongoing maintenance as well. So there's a lot of different factors that are considered in terms of these sorts of things.
So for elected members to get a better understanding of that, as Councillor McCann said, to take that offline, could we appreciate we're heading towards the end of the year, but it's probably a 30-40 minute discussion amongst elected members and staff. Could we note that down, Grayson, for staff to see if they can possibly help elected members better understand that procurement process around playgrounds? Because certainly what we're seeing is a considerable effort from staff in terms of consulting with the community, but dissatisfaction from some in the community around the options out of that consultation. And I absolutely, having gone through it in Otaki, understand all of what you've said and more around the why, but I think maybe for others around the table it might be helpful for them to understand it and provide some feedback to staff as well. And also for elected members, it'll be a discussion through LTP. I know we talked about whether some parks are actually disestablished in the sense of equipment and become more wild play, and investing more heavily in other areas as well. So reprioritising that budget, or if we want to, increasing it, but that'll come at a cost. Councillor Pravanov. Councillor McCann, you had no further questions, It's
Is wild play a real term?
Well, evidently that came out from somebody else. Councillor Buswell, I think, or someone. Councillor Pravanov.
Yes, so thank you. So as Mr. Chair, as you intimated, there tends to be quite a lot of consultation go around playground upgrades. But in relation to Councillor McCann's comment, I think it probably the community needs. It's really good it would be really useful for the community to realise that it's not only for younger people, older people can also submit on that. And I suppose my question is, when these consultation rounds occur, do older people actually submit on the types of equipment they would like in these playgrounds? No, they don't.
Can we just let staff respond to the question rather than everyone else?
I know the team, as we said before, actively engages with the community about this, and I imagine they're trying to get all different viewpoints into it. I couldn't tell you in terms of who responds, but we can come back to you on that. But I'm pretty sure that they get feedback from people that, from all different parts of the community in terms of the playground equipment, from having grandkids and having all those sorts of things perspective. So, yeah.
Yeah. So from my experience, I've usually done that work at the park, and Kathy, I know you've been involved, I've been involved, and then I'll also do some stuff online as well. So I guess it's up to people whether they want to have their grandparents there, they want to engage in feedback, but they don't actually go out for sort of formal consultation. But Councillor Pravanov, maybe we just capture that part of that discussion and that other piece of work with around playgrounds. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is within the provisions of this part of the report, but I was wondering about alternative campsites to the Otaki Gorge one. And I know that Sean was looking at talking to Doc about it, but Doc do administer the Otaki Health Camp, and perhaps those grounds would be suitable.
So if we could probably take that one offline, because noting we're supposed to have a briefing study now. I'm not trying to shut the conversation down, but it isn't part of this report. So if someone could just come back to Councillor Elliott. Maurice, just back over to you.
Darren, Recreation and Leisure, page 90.
90 to 94 team. Sorry, I'll try and remember to keep telling you the page numbers. And Grayson, if you could have just noted that action for Sean and Councillor Elliott.
In terms of COVID, the impacts in terms of attendance at swimming pools, basically it's been a period where people have had to, gradually come back, and they've seen that uplift in terms of attendance, but that's taken a while to build up. It's been the same with, library books in terms of those sorts of things. It's, good attendance, but just that increase again in people being comfortable in terms of borrowing books and those sorts of things. In terms of the collection, COVID has impacted things in a different way. Trying to get stock into the country is a problem. So basically, if you're trying to bring in stuff from overseas, it is a longer time period to get that stock. It's been ordered, but there's delays in terms of arrival of new books and stuff like that.
Any questions from elected members? Councillor Halliday.
I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of certain people with regards to a comment around books and how much we should spend on them. But I am curious, with our book budget, do we just buy hardcover books, or is it sort of like a range of items that can be borrowed through the library? In other words, are we talking about e-books or videos or all sorts of other apparent things that are available in libraries?
Yes, so definitely there's a range of things, and there was I think it's a comment in the paper about a large increase in terms of people subscribing to the ebook network, and so that's actively resourced. There's also DVDs, magazines, all sorts of different things that they provide as part of that service.
And I'm just clarifying, does that come out of that book budget? That's on top of the book budget as such?
There's a book budget, yep, and as I understand it, that
Covers everything.
Thank you. Can we move on to the next category?
Yes, so community facilities and support, page 95. Maybe Darren and Janice.
I think this is mostly me again. Welcome. So in terms of two projects, again, most of the indicators are positive. There is two projects that are on target. So the team's made great progress in terms of the renewals, in terms of housing, and continue to deliver those. And so there was another 3 full renewals delivered during the period. So that brings a total of 40 now undertaken. In terms of the college gymnasium, that's a project that's been led by the college. That's in relation to the changing room and a replacement of the roof and just a tidy up of the interior of the gymnasium. In terms of the next two,
So just a question on that particular one from myself. So I don't have an issue with that, but I just wanted clarification. We have an agreement there around the gymnasium. Is that the $255,000 that's budgeted in there? Is that so? It's obviously for Q3 and Q4, but is there funding the year after? Is there the funding year after that? I'm just asking in relation to the effort that I had to go to just to get a similar amount of funding spread over 6 years for Otaki College, which we were successful in getting in the last triennium. But here's reasonable significant amount here for the Parapara Umu College Gymnasium. Is there a roof renewals and other bits and pieces like that come into that? I'm just trying to get a scale of actually the level of funding that's going towards that.
Yeah, look. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is that agreement is a fairly blunt instrument. From memory, it's a 50-year, and actually Councillor Halliday might be in a better position, having met with Crispin recently. I think it's a pretty blunt instrument, and there's no mechanism in there to really accurately forecast R&M and replacement. And I think that certainly the advice I've suggested to Crispin is that we need to review that agreement and just be clear of what we're up for, because within the confines of that document, there could be some requirement for us to front up with 50% of unbudgeted funding, and that goes to your point about how accurately we can forecast. So I don't know if Councillor Halliday's in a better position.
Do you want to add anything to that, Councillor Halliday? Because I imagine you're on that group that considers that.
Councillor Randall, please feel would jump in at all, Bernie. Look, it's a 50-year arrangement. It was a very blunt instrument, 50-50 share of maintenance cost. That gives us access to that hall, fairly significant access to that hall. There hasn't been a lot of, and it's 50-50 of the ongoing maintenance as well as, should we say, deterioration replacement as well. So the first part, this is just the first part of this. There hasn't been big budget items, should we say, over the last while. So this is, if you like, is an accumulation of that agreement that's meant that really is a replacement situation now. It is jointly done with the Education Department. The roof of the main hall needs to be done as well. That's not part of this, and that's a substantial investment. Money has been put aside for that, but they're negotiating with the Education Department to see how much can be pulled out of that bucket, if you like.
So when you say money has been set aside for that, is that the Ministry of Education has put money aside, or is that Council through the long-term plan?
Council through the long-term plan, as far as I'm aware. And it's just like a bureaucracy in general. It just takes a while to get the Education Department, but this whole conversation's been going slowly, and it's come to a point now where the work has to be done. So there's a bit of a rocket being applied to the Education Department, and so you may see some more investment in this space, but it is in regards to a fairly blunt tool that was negotiated about 42 odd years ago. The conversation will be coming up, not immediately, but we have to have an eye on the renewal of that arrangement and what that might look like as well.
Thank you.
At some point.
Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, two quick questions. Is it the east building or the west building, looking at it from this direction? The one on the east boundary or the west boundary?
Rooms that are being done at the moment. So it's the roof over the changing rooms themselves, and the roof over the hallway as well. Stage 2 will be the actual roofs over the gymnasiums.
Is that the original? Was it the newer building built on the far east side of the school cottage grounds? Do you know? And just my second question. Is our allocation of time to use this resource? We don't. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, it's very well utilised. Angelo Hill with his hoops club, the marching girls. But yeah, no, it's very, very, very well used.
So we're still on community facilities, page 95 to 101. I've got a further question, but I see Councillor Pravanov has got.
Yes, so it's my understanding that one of those halls actually is the hall, does actually belong to KCDC, whereas the other one doesn't. So it's just seeking clarification from Councillor Elliott's. Because I know that there's, like certainly when you look at the list of charges for halls, it's
okay. So we'll just look for staff a response to that.
Yep.
Sorry, anyone in the room aware?
No, and lots of quizzical looks. I think this one will have to take My understanding, it's not been front of mind for me in terms of the property portfolio, but I defer to wiser and longer heads. We need to take that away.
So we're going to come back to you about that, team. We're not going to discuss that further now. The staff can take that offline and come back via email and just confirm that. Any further questions on 95 to 101? So I've got one there just around page 98, and it's around neighbourhood support, community safety, and so forth. And it goes on through, talks about the Mahara Place campaign at young people, aims to promote good safe behaviour in town centre in Waikanae. We've got some significant issues there also in Otaki. So just wondering why, I mean, that's not just been within the last few weeks, but it seems to be totally lacking out of consideration in this particular area. I would say more so than in Waikanae, but...
So I think that you can expect to see that covered in more detail in the next quarterly report, and I can update that staff had a very good meeting with police in Otaki yesterday, and if I pull up an email I might be able to find a set of words to describe what they agreed. Hang on one moment. So they met with police in Otaki yesterday, and council staff will be working together with police and others on a community-wide service approach to address the wider challenges and issues in Otaki.
Thanks, Janice. Is there any further questions in this category? No? All right, Maurice, if we can move on to the next one.
We are on economic development, page 102.
Yep. So in terms of the indicators on track, this involves the town centre work program, which is continuing to progress as part of the revocation linkages. In terms of the strategic land purchase, there was no settlements or nothing occurred, apart from some minor works to on the marine parade property to get that ready for lease. So that is in process. In terms of Elevate Otaki, I could defer to the chair if he wanted to provide an update on that.
I'm happy to take questions if elected members have any.
Yeah. And in terms of Gateway, we've discussed that previous. In terms of, I suppose, other notable achievements during the quarter, obviously the ED strategy was a big one, and that's enabled the team to now get on to delivering the actions within the ED strategy.
Any questions out of these from page 102 to 110? No, I'll provide two short commentaries in regards to Elevate Otaki. I just thought I'd wait and see if there were any questions. So the first one is around our strategy. We'd worked quite comprehensively on a strategy, and in light of COVID and the changing shape of the environment, we've and also from our experience around or the lessons learnt from doing the Otaki Identity Project, we are reviewing that strategy, simplifying it and focusing on what we think is more achievable and more relevant in light of COVID and in the current state of play. The second one I wanted to bring attention to is it refers to a role for an initial 3 months. That could be longer depending on the outcome of the recovery plan. There was no funding to support this through the recovery plan. Evidently, the Chamber's been tasked with activating town centres. Had this been communicated earlier with Elevate Otaki, we would have potentially reassessed the role that we advertised. So at the moment, we're holding urgent discussions around that role and around the suitability of it in light of the decisions around the lack of support and so forth. So I thought I'd provide a little bit of an update on that one. We're just rethinking that. And that, I think that's all. So if there's no further questions in that area, I'll move on to Darren.
And so in terms of the activation of the town centres, that there is basically a discussion to have with the Chamber based on the consultation that happened during the development of the economic actions. There's been no allocation of funding to the Chamber to do that work at the moment. So there's been no allocation with that or agreement made.
And that was certainly made clear to me by Natasha. Thank you. Maurice?
Thank you, Chair. We're starting with infrastructure on page 112, access and transport.
So I guess this is the first quarter, so things are just starting to get moving with regard to the Capital Works program. So no particular issues of concern. The reseal work, majority of that work will go on in February, so that we've started some of that pre-seal work. Footpath renewals, you would have seen the work going on Kapi Road. They've finished a major section of that. Drainage bridges, there is some work proposed down at the Klein Street on those culverts that run through that link to I guess the discharge of the Wharamuka, I think it combines through there. That work is going on at the moment in terms of design. There may be an issue there, I think it was mentioned previously, around fish passage through there, and consenting conditions limit the amount of time that you can actually work in that stream. So at the moment we're hopeful that we can get that work done, but maybe that may have an impact on delivery this year if we can't get all of that work done within that window. You get quite a small window where you've got to manage fish. And east-west connector, again, it's the business case process associated with the link road is going on at the moment, with the regional land transport program being developed, which incorporates that project. That's it.
Questions out of here? I think we've got Councillor Elliott.
Just like to say, Sean, that's a really lovely footpath you've made out there.
You personally?
I do try. Yep, no. Higgins actually been performing very well. The new maintenance contractor, that work is being undertaken by them as part of that contract. So that particular job is a very difficult environment to work in down there. So certainly I will pass that on to them. They'll be pleased to hear that.
You could tell by the calluses on Sean's hands. Councillor Compton.
Actually, just briefly on that point, there's a thread on Facebook which was about the width of footpaths and bins blocking them and whatnot for people in wheelchairs, and so seeing that wider footpath there, you still can't control where people end up leaving their bins, but if they put them where they're meant to, then it does leave a clear path through, so that's really good. What I wanted to ask is around the culvert work on McLean Street, is that going to be synced up to go alongside any work for the gateway if that goes ahead? Because obviously it seems counterproductive if we were to go and do a whole lot of work on that culvert and then you have to go back in the next window to go and do any work on that stream for the gateway if that is approved to go ahead.
Yes, so we have consent for the culvert upgrade work, and absolutely the intention was to incorporate majority of the gateway work is on the outlet, and there's a stormwater pipe that cuts across the car park that needs to be diverted. So we absolutely are trying to combine those. The other issue that will affect timing is a decision around the gateway. We don't really want to be going in there, as you say, and digging things up if they're not combined. So that may also impact on the timing of the roading work, I guess. So we may look to, again, all dependent on what decision's made, that might need to get pushed out, because again there is, like I said, a small window that you have to get in there. I think January to May is a very short period of time to do the amount of work associated with both of those culverts. So at the moment that's probably, I'm not sure if that's highlighted as a risk in the report, but that's probably the biggest one to delivery of that project, making sure we align it and the time needed to do it.
Thank you.
Councillor Pravanov, I've got you next, but Councillor Halliday just wants to comment on this one. Is that, yeah, Councillor Halliday?
John, just clarifying, you said you're talking about digging up. Were you referring to the car park at the boat club?
No, it's the where the gateway's proposed. There's a stormwater pipeline that runs through that car park, and you need to move that out of the way, obviously, and reconnect it up to the stream. So the two culverts run underneath the road just beside the roundabout in that area where the sculpture was, and then there's an open drain, open channel in between that was also going to be upgraded as part of this work. And then the fourth bit is the outlet and the improvement works around there associated with the gateway.
Thank you.
Councillor Pravanov?
Thank you, Chair. So through you, Sean, expressways, service requests and Gorse. I know that it's not a a job that KCDC needs to do, but I'm just wondering how the liaison with NZTA is going in relation to having the gorse managed on the expressways.
So that relates to the planting associated with the expressway. There's been a lot of complaints around the lack of maintenance on that. Council have raised it both through the board for Mackay's to Pika, which is still in place as they work through the ceiling rework they're doing, but also through their operational relationship we have with them. We've raised it again. They have started, I don't know if you to the south, you'll see around Poplar, Fulton Hogan are now have picked up and are starting to manage that the gorse through that area, and they're working up through and along the alignment. Not quite sure if they have enough resource targeted to the scale of the work that we've flagged. So we are continuing to monitor them, and there is the option to go back to have a conversation about non-compliance in terms of the consent conditions, because the planting was part of mitigation to manage the environmental effects of the road. If that planting is failing, then you could argue that they're not complying, and that's the area where we would likely apply some more pressure to get them to ramp up the work they're doing at the moment, because it is.
So Sean and his team are actively pushing the agency on that. Any further questions on this category? And look, I appreciate we're over time, and it's always dangerous to go back in the report, but I'm the chair, so I can. I do want to draw elected members' attention to page 108 specifically, or thereabouts. In a previous discussion, we talked about the lack of that sort of domestic tourism marketing, the need to get onto something, and I had referred to the fact that we already are. So you'll see through there on page 108 some of the work that the ED team has done around destination marketing, some figures there in terms of reach and impressions and so forth. So there's more than just that, but I think I just draw your attention to the fact that the comments were around that we needed to do something and do something soon. That actually stuff has been underway for some time now, and that particular section of the report talks to that if you want to refresh yourself on that topic. What's that, sorry? Next week, you mean? Oh, the one that's following after? Yeah. So, but just saying, in terms of, in the absence of briefings, they do get reported back through, and it's an example of that. So, Maurice, if I could just hand you on to the next category. Sorry, Sean. Coastal management.
We'll just keep rolling. So, Psychoactive seawall is the main project within the coastal area. The funding this year to put the tender out to start work, but the majority of the funding actually starts next year, I think, and the year after. At the moment that it's all completed and ready to go, the issue that's flagged in the report around the risk, one of the risk issues is the cost escalation associated with that particular project. So the original estimate, the work we did during COVID to put an application into CIP, the extra costs associated with, market driven, and also some of the related costs associated with materials has pushed that estimate up over very close or over the actual current budget. So we will need to have a conversation. There is proposed a briefing to come back to council to talk about that and the implications of that associated with both, probably more associated with next year's funding, because that's the delivery of the project, not this year. So it won't be an issue for this year's budget, but it will be potentially for next year's.
Councillor Halliday?
My apologies to be inflammatory around this, I haven't been involved in any of these discussions, but if that was to be just let go and not dealt with, and should we say access to that way obviously would have to go down a different route, how bad would that be?
So that road provides access to all of those properties along the parade, although obviously some of them have got alternative access, but not directly to those properties. So if that's 900 metres long, if that was not to be replaced, and if it was to fail, then in theory, potentially then you would lose 900 metres of that road and the associated access to all those properties. I'm not sure the number of properties, but it would be at least 200 or 300, I would have thought. There's water mains down there that services those properties. There's no wastewater, obviously, because Psychoactive doesn't have any reticulated wastewater, but yeah, you would also lose water connections potentially for those properties. There are stormwater outfalls that come through the wall, and there would be some sumps and other associated pieces of infrastructure that connect to it. So the current policy is that council protect public assets, and there are a number of public assets down there. Campbell Park, obviously, there's a significant asset that attracts a lot of visitors from across the district, and the hall there as well is another council asset that provides access to. We have had storms in the past that have taken out sections of the short sections of the road further south along there, but again, yeah, it's a those are the impacts.
Councillor Elliott, I think you're up next, but you're... Thank you. Moving along then, I don't see any other names up on the screen, so page 123 to 126, team.
So the primary piece of work in here, the CapEx, is the capping of the landfill, which has slowed down a bit because of the weather, but still we've got a reasonable amount of time there to finish that. So at some point we are looking to try and organise a site visit to go up there and have a look to get a sense as to the extent of the work that's already been done up there and the number of assets that are there now that were provided either through the Mackay to Pika through the yard and the precast yard. So there is a lot actually that has gone on up there on that site, and certainly the capping, it is a very different environment than it used to be 3 or 4 years ago.
Any questions on this section? Councillor Hanford.
I was just wondering why, as a part of our cross-council work programs, that we didn't have an update on the carbon and energy management side of things. I noticed that it was in under the list on page 64, but then in the appendix there wasn't a report on that. So I was just wondering whether that was missed or whether you could provide a quick update under this heading. But I just thought it would be important that it's recognised also as in a cross-council work program. Oh, perfect.
That one. So I'm not. It's been moved into infrastructure now because of the establishment of that team within infrastructure. So reporting on it here or within the cross-council program, I guess that's why it's sitting where it is at the moment.
But it will still remain in a cross-council program?
Absolutely. So it really just it's a formatting thing in terms of structure of the report, not the.
Could I just add to that, Sophie, because I was actually looking at catching offline just about that general discussion and the discussions we had in earlier months, almost 12 months ago, because what I'm seeing reading the reports now is the language changing around that climate stuff to the cross-council. So I don't know if you picked up on it, but through a number of the reports there is actually, what I've certainly noticed is a deliberate change in the languaging around a cross-council, and hence the topic for this one as well. It's not just our climate change program, it's across the council activities.
I would just add on to that, it's not here in the update, but the template for all of our reports is we've structured an update in terms of the wording around a specific climate change reference to all of those reports that come back through council for any of our committees, and that will be coming through some point in the new year when we put that through into Info Council as part of the report generation. So we sort of flicked off the coastal, I think. Was the landfill capping? I don't know if anyone had any questions.
Can I just check in with Councillor Randall, because he's got, what topic was it on? Is that going forward or backwards?
The next forward.
So we'll just wait for staff to talk to that, because I just jumped forward there a little bit. Was there anything on the previous category? No. All right. So, Sean, if you just want to move on to this one.
Yep. So the work program there, I guess, in terms of we are upgrading the EV charging capability within or outside of the building where we have the current charging station. So that's being upgraded so that we can add more vehicles to the fleet. We started that fleet review. Actually, timing of it wasn't great because it aligned with the COVID. So in terms of actually utilising the fleet, there wasn't much to monitor. But it's over an 8 to 12 month period of time. So that report will actually give us an indication as to whether we've got the right numbers of fleet, whether the fleet is appropriate in terms of its the status as to whether there's more opportunity for more EV vehicles, or again the distribution between diesel, four-wheel drives, utes, those sorts of things, is correct, and how we might be able to be a bit more efficient. The Energised Otaki, the solar, obviously that project was commissioned and is up and running, and we're looking at renewing our natural gas contract. We've also, I'm not sure if there's another slide. No, so our electricity contract is up for renew at the moment, and we will be coming, I think that's on the 10th, potentially the council meeting on the 10th, there'll be a paper coming to you with some options there. We're a part of the Government Procurement group, so through that group there are a couple of options. One of those is with Contact, one is with Meridian. Meridian have a way of offsetting carbon as part of their contract, but it does come at an extra cost, so that would form part of the conversation that we have at the time when that paper comes to you for a decision. So there's a premium that you end up paying if you want to go down that path, but it does have a greater offset in terms of our emission directly, and as soon as we switch over to that, as opposed to picking up on some of the work program that we're doing to achieve those same reductions.
Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Mellon. Climate change experts have told me that if we continue to go ahead and build the seawall at Paikokariki, that the carbon emissions it produces will increase drastically the total carbon emissions for Kapiti. Your comment, please?
I couldn't tell you what that might mean in terms of numbers. I guess the current program, the current upgrade is for a concrete structure. Obviously, during construction, there's a whole lot of activity associated with that. So yes, I expect there will be an increase in terms of emissions associated with that. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what that might mean longer term with regard to the wall itself, but.
Councillor McCann.
Quick clarification: when you fix a pothole or a footpath, are you also creating some emissions? So is there not some trade-off?
Me?
Not you personally, but you did allude to that. Is there not?
Sure. Sean gives us some emissions at some stage.
Ensuring that we maintain our infrastructure, etc., and emissions.
Yes, without going into, I guess, what may be caused as a result of not having a roading network that's overly efficient and vehicles that pot around and damage themselves through potholes. So yes, there is an element of that with everything we do in terms of the physical environment that we work within.
Any further questions on this section? Otherwise, we'll move through to stormwater. No, back to you.
So again, this one early in the year, we are working through the Capital Works program, and not aware of any issues at the moment in terms of that particular area with either KPIs or our expectation that we will deliver the full Capital Works program this year, which is potentially in the order of, I think it's a bit more than that, $4 or $5 million worth of Capital Works this year.
Any questions on stormwater? No. Next.
So wastewater, we do have some issues here with regard to timing. I have referenced this previously, the Paraparaumu wastewater treatment plant consent. The time frame associated with that renewal, we are now at a point where we are incurring extra cost, and we're looking to seek an extension to the current consent with Greater Wellington Regional Council due to our ability to engage meaningfully with iwi with regard to that consent replacement. So we don't now believe that we're able to lodge a full consent in the time frame that we have left available, so we're seeking an extension, and to do that we will incur costs providing an application that we wouldn't have necessarily incurred before. So some of that cost will be recovered because the work is not totally wasted, but there will certainly be an element of that is not recoverable in terms of the project cost. So it won't affect this year's budget, but it will affect the timing, and it will affect the overall budget for the renewal itself. Other one relates there to the duplicate rising main. So that project again was delayed and is in this year, and hopefully we can move that forward. And there's one of the issues raised there, and it sort of links to the conversation about procurement and being able to be agile and a bit flexible with that. At the moment, with all of the extra funding that's been put into the Three Waters sector, it's very difficult to actually obtain contractors to do those types of physical work. So at the moment, we're looking at trying to negotiate with a single contractor just to have them locked in to deliver that project for us. Because of the lack of availability, and it's just Wellington City with Wellington Water, I think they got 46 million from the government as part of this first tranche. And that's on top of all the additional work they're already doing in that space.
Any questions out of wastewater? 135 to 140. Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just a little bit concerned about the iwi consultation process that has put this project behind. Is that due to lack of resources on their behalf, or?
Yeah, there are a number of reasons why that has not really happened. One, resourcing is a key one. So we have, though, recently met with Te Aotearoa, and they provided us with a review of their organisation and what they feel they need in terms of resourcing to be able to engage more, comprehensively with council. So, and with regard to this project, part of that process, they have also just recently made a commitment to engage directly on this project to allow us to get that, extension through with Greater Wellington Regional Council. So.
All right, no further questions. We'll move on to the next category.
So water, again, the number of projects through here, primarily the Waikanai water treatment plant, clarifier and associated works, which is part of the Water Safety and Resilience program. So there's Waikanai's in there, but it's also the Otaki and Hauturi schemes as well. So design works going well there. That one again, the rapid mobilisation playbook is and again, this is where some of the government's procurement processes are quite useful, and we do actually reference them. That one is one that MB have put together. There's a structure there about how you might engage directly with the contractor, and there will be a report coming back, I think, on the 10th to the council meeting with a recommendation that we would like to utilise that mechanism to directly engage the contractor to deliver that project. And again, that's around availability, market resource, timing, and cost escalation and risk that we would like to talk to as part of that paper. So and this project is where some of the government's funding is actually being directed to. So there's $5 million worth of capital funds going into this project.
Councillor Randall.
Just a question of costs. The clarifier, which will cost us money to install a new clarifier, I mean, and at the same time we're having discussions with all the Three Waters, government, government taking it away from us. Why should we be spending ratepayers' money for something when it could be possible that this the water treatment will be taken away from us in the not too distant future?
Yes, so the risk there is the clarifier may collapse, and then there would be a significant issue with providing potable water to Waikanai, Paraparumu and Raumati. That could occur. It has issues in terms of its seismic strength, so that's why we're replacing it at the moment.
Just Paraparumu, Waikanai and Raumati, not Otaki? Is there a problem?
Well, Otaki doesn't actually, not connected to that network, but
so I don't see a problem. No, I'm kidding. Any further questions on the water area?
Oh, there's another
slide. Sorry.
So again, that's really the same project, and that's the Otaki and Hautiri work that we're also progressing as part of this project.
All right, team. It's getting late in the day. Nothing here. Moving along. Page 149 to 152, district-wide planning. And we're looking to... Natasha, you're up.
All right. Good afternoon. So, in terms of where things are at with the proposed district plan, the Environment Court has issued a consent order resolving all 3 remaining appeals, and as indicated from Jason Holland in a briefing a few weeks ago, we'll be coming back early in the new year with the next steps for making the district plan operative. Given that the consequence of having all of those remaining appeals resolved is that there are no outstanding appeals on the proposed district plan, which is a fantastic position to be in. And you've also recently received a report on the Variation 2 decision, which means we are very close to getting a operative district plan, which is excellent. Happy to take any questions about any of that.
Hey, that's my job.
Sorry.
Any questions out of 149 to 152? Mr. Jefferson has a question. No. I do have a question, Natasha, regarding the appeals that may be lodged on Variation 2. So it refers to unanticipated costs, which is one question, and whether there's provision made within our budgets for that. And then the second part was how long could that delay the PDP to become operative?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of costs for appeals, we do have a legal budget, which would be our first port of call if we did receive appeals. In terms of how big any unanticipated component of that would really depend on the nature and scale of any appeals that were to be received, and so it's really something that it's very difficult to try and predict, which is why we generally don't try and reserve funding aside just in case for that. We just need to make sure we can find that funding if we need to. And your second question
was how long could it delay the PDP from becoming operative?
Yeah. So the first priority, if we do get appeals, would be to see whether or not the sorts of issues were able to be resolved through mediation with the appellants, in which case it might be a matter of a few months to go through that kind of a process. If they are ones where mediation is not going to prove fruitful, then it would take going to an Environment Court hearing, which can take potentially be a 6 to 8 month period to first go through mediation to get to that point to determine that it wasn't able to be resolved, and then get Environment Court hearing scheduled.
Thank you. So there's a possibility that the proposed district plan may not be operative until later next year?
If we were in a position where there were complex appeals that were received on the Variation 2, it's reasonably unlikely, I think, but I wouldn't discount it either. Yeah.
Possible. All right. Thank you, Councillor Hallett.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify in regards to the consents issues, the 3 remaining appeals with St Heliers Coastlands and the Kapiti Coast Airport. The conversations we had with Templeton Group through the Kapiti Coast Airport implied that they withdrew the issue, if you like, and it was given to us. It was a gesture of good faith. But was that helpful as part of sorting this process out in a more timely manner?
Yes, it was. Absolutely.
All right, don't see any further names up on the screen, so we'll move on to the next section.
Me, Mr. Chairman, just waiting to go red. Take you up into the top right-hand corner. Income is absolutely on track for the year. Interestingly enough, that's largely driven from the dog registration, which is currently, even though it's outside of this reporting period, currently sitting at 98%, which is a fantastic achievement this side of Christmas. Normally you get those numbers in sort of April, May, when you start doing some compliance checks. Operating revenue, expenditures are favourable, and there's a wee blip there of $6,000 in the capital spend. That was an invoice from the animal control refurbishment. So there. What I did want to draw your attention to on this slide is the number of service requests in the quarter. There's a huge number there that the team get, and they can range from complaints re noise or dogs, or where they need to make a slightly more detailed inquiry about building or resource consent. But it just wanted to draw your attention to the sheer volume that the team are dealing with in any given quarter. As we come out of lockdown and got back into the new BAU, the building team are getting back into the rhythm, and processing of consents was down a little bit compared to last quarter, only in 18 on page 154. There's only 18 difference given everything that we've been through. The really pleasing thing was the average time for processing those consents was, those building consents was 8 days. So the team are turning them around on average very, very quickly. And then, Maurice, if we go to the second slide, and they'll take any questions out of the two. Building inspections, again, I wanted to draw to your attention, again, in the report body itself, is 1,375 building inspections in the quarter. So that's going out and making sure builders are doing what they say they're going to do. And those inspections were taking on average, by the time they ring up to do a booking, 1 to 2 days. So the team are turning those around and responding to the customer. In fact, I understand in this first quarter of this year, they were able to do same-day inspections. So the builder would ring up and say, I'm ready. So, yeah, pleasing stuff. Public safety, so that building warranted fitness, 40 inspections there, and that's just making sure that the buildings that are open to the public are safe for them to go in and do that. So we're on track for our annual sort of target. And then if we move into the resource consent space, 60 resource consents issued in the quarter. In the body of the report itself, all of those were non-notified. The number of consents issued was down against those last year. That was probably something we could more anticipate given the impacts of COVID. So 10 subdivision certifications, 45 new lots coming to the market, which is good. And some additional work that is in the body of the report that I wanted to draw your attention to, which is the ongoing monitoring of both PP2O and Mackayster Peka Peka, and all the work particularly around the, if I get the acronyms right, SSEMPs, the Site-Specific Environmental Management Plans, just to make sure that the contractors and NZTAs, the consent holders, are doing what they say they're going to do, which again goes to the protection of the environment. So happy to take any questions, and hopefully that's given you a bit of a snapshot of what's gone on.
Any questions on 153 to 158? James, I've got one just around those service requests, and you did clarify that or elaborate on it a little bit further. Does that include the service request responded to by our contractor that is awarded the contract for? And I think this is probably more roading, and because previously when we had issues around there, it's actually the contractor that's not responded. Or are these directly service requests that are internally managed by?
I'm looking at Natasha, but it's something we could take away, and I don't want to hazard a guess unless...
I thought it was both. But I guess to cut to the chase, do we have an issue there with the contractor, notwithstanding the amount of requests, or is the contractor performing well?
There have been some periodically from time to time, since we've had the new contractor on board, there have been some issues which we have got on top of reasonably quickly as soon as they've been brought to our attention. So they're coming along, but there still is the odd issue which pops up. And
you guys are dealing with it. All right, thank you. I don't see any other. Councillor Buswell.
I just had a question around the residential building consents. I saw some figures last night, and there was a significant drop. And I'm just wondering, do you really believe that it is all through COVID, or is there something else underlying? Is there lack of confidence in the building sector that they're not putting consents in, or how are we tracking there?
So look, I talked to the team about that the other day, and interestingly enough, we had 26 applications just come in through the portal last weekend. But look, I think to your point, Councillor, through you, Mr. Chairman, there is a capacity issue. and people are now ringing up saying, I can't get a builder, I want to put my consent on hold, and all my understanding is gross generalisation, but all the group builders are going and doing work down the track because it's higher value, there's probably more profit, and I'm making lots of assumptions. But I think getting that sort of business intelligence and being closer, and Natasha might have more to add to that.
Yeah, well, just looked at the data from, I think it would have been from end of August, and there was overall in that period, the year up to that date, we had roughly the same number of building consents issued as the year prior. So while there was certainly inspections and building work couldn't happen over lockdown, we were still receiving and processing applications, which is really good for the sector because it does provide a pipeline, which is where their concern is not necessarily what they've got on their books right now, but is potentially what they might have on their books next year and the year after. So that's kind of what we're interested in seeing and making sure that we're still getting the good numbers coming through of new applications. So I'm not sure whether the data you saw, the news you saw, was Kapiti specific in terms of numbers of consents, or whether it was more broadly around the region.
I guess just to add to that, that situation that you've just explained is the here and now, and it's a real physical issue that we have in terms of getting builders to build here. So in some respects, it doesn't matter how much work we do in the housing area, we can't build the bloody things because we don't have the staff, we don't have the capacity in the sector to build it. So that's a massive issue.
Oh, you've set Councillor McCann off now. He's gone and pushed his button.
Very good, James. Very good, James. My button's pushed. I would note, though, that the immense time it takes to get these projects off the ground, that the work that's occurring now may well end up having fruition when there are builders available, or there might be a population increase and lots of builders born, and 20 years' time they'll be available.
I think you should have phrased that, do you think? Because then I would have had a question mark at the end. But then, Councillor Elliott.
Do you think?
Do you think it could be to do with the fact that their builders very, very seriously are trying to do 12 months work in 8 months this year? Yeah.
All right, team. So where are we at? We're on governance and tangata whenua.
Hello again. Several slides from me to finish us off, I think. So as you can see on the screen in front of you, we continued with our usual schedule of briefings and workshops alongside our meetings. Te whakaminenga o Kapiti met. We completed work that had started in the previous financial year around the maramataka, and that was launched early in this quarter. Citizenship ceremonies, so on to the next slide, didn't take place as a result of COVID-19, so one of those really lovely experiences that lots of us enjoy. We haven't had the same opportunity for this year. I do understand that planning is underway for that, getting back up and running. We continue to receive Official Information Act requests despite COVID, and obviously you guys will remember that you had some meetings. Other than that, I guess I should also just point out that work on the Waikanai Community Board by-election also has been underway in the quarter in question.
Thank you, Janice. Councillor McCann.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a very simple question. What percentage of those information requests are about the gateway?
Percentage of that is about 25%, I think, of those were related to the gateway. You did have around 20 to 30 in the first quarter. And obviously you can see there's a significant increase on that quarter from last year. We can also give an update around the context of that. There's been a recent survey of the sector in a number of councils. I think a third of councils responded to a survey about official information requests, and some of the results have come back on that, and there was an increase of around 34% in numbers and complexity of increases felt across the sector, and we would agree with that. Hard to know what the cause is, but there certainly are increasing in the breadth of what's being requested and in the complexity.
Is there any? I'll come to you. Is there any quantifying action around the time that goes into responding to that? Was that a part of the sector response? Is it able to be quantified in terms of that represents 1.5 FTEs and 60 hours worth of work?
Some councils do record hours spent on requests, and we certainly used to, although we stopped doing that a few years ago just because we weren't seeing enough value really for the effort involved in actually recording time. We do when there's a potential for charging for a request. That's very rare. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Elliott.
If councillors listen to the RNZ podcast, the detail on Judge Bouchier, it's done really recently, they might understand that this is a nationwide problem, this increase in OIAs to the Ombudsman's office and them getting to the Ombudsman's office.
Any further questions on this sector? Don't see. Councillor Buswell.
Jen, I would just like to thank this area in terms of building some really good relationships back up with iwi. Last week we had a LTP workshop and we had all 3 iwi sitting around the table, which was really powerful, and it certainly helped me as a councillor, and I know others around the table certainly felt the power in terms of having them around the table chatting and discussing in a really cool kind of manner. It was great, so thank you.
Thanks, Ange. And it reminded me, I meant to thank Natasha, the building team, just the feedback through there around the consent processing times and that Mr Jefferson had referred to, or James, your team or whatever, it's changing. If you could just feed that back, those are some pretty quick response times around those 2 areas there, and so if that could just be noted. Right, are we moving? I think that was the last one, wasn't it? Excellent. All right, team. Well, thanks, Chris and Maurice. Nice to meet you. See you here. We're thinking we were going to finish at 2:15, and we haven't even got through the publicly excluded agenda. So that is a bit of a signal from you all that if we want to finish soon, we need to get through the next bit with pace. So if someone wants to move the recommendations, sorry, I'll just go back to thank you. 71. I've just got to scroll all the way back up to 71. Was that you moving them, Councillor Holborough? And seconded by Councillor McCann. Right of introduction. Waived. Any further discussion? Councillor McCann.
I think on behalf of all councillors, I would like to thank the staff for the tremendous amount of work, and us asking questions is not should not be taken as us questioning what's there, but showing a genuine interest in the tremendous amount of work that you actually are undertaking. And I think this has been a great process and a really good presentation, so thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Councillor Holborough.
So just to adopt all those comments, thank you.
And that was your right of reply. Put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, and that is carried. We now move on to, thanks Chris and Maurice, nice to meet you. Moving on to the Councillor Randall. Thanks, Councillor, for reminding me. I was going to just check with them. My understanding is there's no issue with them remaining for the discussion. If you've got another briefing to go to, then by all means feel free. Oh, you mean the one that we've got next? Oh, sorry. I thought you meant a separate briefing. So, look, I've been made aware that it's not appropriate for community board members to stay.
You just have to explain why.
Sure. All right. Well, they are... No, I don't think... I'm just waiting for Sean to come back, so that...
Sorry.
All right. I'm just going to go...
Yeah, I know.
So I'm just bringing up my other report, because it should really say at the... So look, I'm just clarifying. The community board members can stay out. There's no issue around particular confidentiality within the body of the report as relating to the community that you have interest in terms of your representation. So if someone can move that we go into publicly excluded, because we're not yet in, Councillor Compton, and seconded by Councillor Holborough. Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye.